Welcome back, it's New Mutator, and in addition to playing Week 6 of Myth Kickballers, which those videos are available on my channel, I'm also going to be casting them kind of in a proper way, giving you kind of the bird's eye view of what happened in those games, since while playing you only got kind of the very narrow view that I had while playing. And I'm kind of curious to see, what also was happening throughout the games in addition to what I was able to see kind of in my local sector on my screen. So that's kind of why I'm doing it this way, just to show you, give you a kind of contrast between what Myth is like while you're playing it versus what it's like while viewing films, which, there's obviously a lot more available, a lot more information available while viewing a film because for instance, we can see both teams simultaneously on the map. There is no fog of war, for instance. So we'll go ahead and blow that up just a little bit. And yeah, so this is week 6 of Myth Kickballers. Like I mentioned previously, there are two captains. We have Kruniak, and we also have Giant Killer General. Giant Killer General, of course, with his team, Kramisi, Funk, Sam the Butcher, Dom, Big Muddin, I believe that's Kirk, and Thor. And opposite him in the northeast, it looks like Kruniak is going to be captaining for his team here with Shadow, myself, Dak, HW, Sasper. This is Renwood and Mercadon. So it looks like there's a player missing from Giant Killer General's team. I'm not sure if I'm kind of not sure if that's the way it started, or no, you know what? I believe Renwood randomed onto a team. So I think, let's see, 3, 6, 7. So yeah, they should have 7 players. Yep, that's true. So yeah, that's how that, yeah, if I remember correctly, that's how it was. So the strategy is to split up the forest giants so that they can maximize their harassing abilities. And also when tagging the flag, since it is flag rally. Looks like this flag is going to be guarded, I believe, by Giant Killer General's team. And yeah, so if we remember, I had these Solus here, and I believe I had a couple of these Berserks, but I ended up giving my Berserks to Renwood later on in the game. So that's kind of the story of what happened to me in the game, but let's go ahead and see what happens with everyone else. So, I also wanted to talk about a couple of changes on the horizon. I know some of the guys have been discussing the possibility of introducing a plugin that changes some of the unit trading options for kind of standard myth units. And I think that could be really interesting. Like we noticed, there isn't really too much of a difference between both of these trades, except excuse me, gosh, I don't know what's going on. Except Kruniak opted for Solus, whereas GKG did not. I believe that's like the major difference here. Other than that, I mean, it's pretty much the same. You want to maximize the units that have the most utility, such as forest giants and goals for carrying pus, and then also mortar dwarves is also a good thing to have, as they do damage forest giants quite a bit. And then of course something like these guys, the berserks, are very good also. Just because they're lightning fast. In other words, Thrall Elite are only taken because they're cheap flag defense that prevents most units from taking the flag. So by balancing the unit trading points just a little bit, you can make ideally what the idea is is that every unit is viable. Every unit is made viable, and that reduces the likelihood of having a single optimized trade for a map/game type. Although that still might be the case eventually, but you want to just introduce some life back into other options for the time being. So I think that's an interesting idea, and so I think that some of the guys on the forums are exploring that a little bit further. Looks like Sam the Butcher going to be taking a little bit of damage here. as these Soulless close in on the mid, end up taking that little island there. There are no, believe the whites for Giant Killer General were popped to create some pus, but it doesn't look like Kruniak took any whites to pop at all, instead dumping that points into Solus, it seems. And so yeah, one of the other things that dovetails nicely with the option of changing the unit trading values of some of these units is the introduction of a new game type, which is of course king of the map with 1.8, which I do believe is somewhat being it's being worked on. It's 1.8. I don't want to say that it's nearly finished or it's or anything like that, because I don't know if that's true. But I do know that they are feverishly working on it, trying to get it out in time. And it looks like Croc is going to rush in here, but sustain quite a lot of damage. And that, I don't know if that worked out for him so much. A couple of those in that push. Giant Killer General's team was able to knock out like one or two of those mortar dwarves, but beyond that, that was pretty much it. And maybe take out a couple of those Solus, but look at the damage on Kirk's Forest Giant, which in keeping with his persona, he renamed. But we can see that the other Forest Giants from Murkerdon and Kruniak are at full capacity. They're at full health. And so, it's just curious to me as to whether you would consider that a good trade-off or not. I would consider it a poor trade-off, because the Forest Giants are easily kind of the most valuable units on this map. Let's blow this up a little bit and see if we can locate where some of these units are. So this is specifically, I'm trying to find the other Forest Giant. So it's got to be around here somewhere. There it is, blending in with the surroundings. Giant Killer General. And so the other thing about Forest Giants on this map is that they can go on impassable terrain. They're the only other unit able to do so. Although I was asking about it, if they could go into deep water. It seems like they can, sort of, but not entirely. They can't submerge underwater. So that's something to keep in mind. But they can walk on, this impassable terrain here. Like, most units aren't able to go on that except for Solus, because they don't have legs. They just kind of float. So Solus can go on basically any kind of terrain type, and Forest Giants almost every type of terrain type. So Forest Giants are obviously the most have the most utility in terms of mechanics, since they're fast, they're the most powerful unit type, and they can go basically anywhere. So it's basically tied up at 83% at this point. We'll go ahead and reduce that, since I think we have a grasp on what's happening here. There are a couple flags that Kruniak's team needs to tag at this point to catch up with Giant Killer General's team, which is firmly in the lead. And Murkerdon is going to try to defend against Giant Killer General. Meanwhile, I think Kirk is just going to walk around and try to stick with his force, since if he goes out on his own, he's almost guaranteed to die. And I think did Kruniak tag this? Flag 8? Looks like he did. He's going to try to run up and scout this flag with that lone berserk. And Murkerdon looks like took a pus. And he is going to take some damage, but he isn't going to... Oh my goodness, he kind of a misclick there, turned around. I think that that didn't work out for him. So what Forest Giants will do is they'll walk onto the impassable terrain and position themselves so that they can deal damage without taking it. And Murkerdon, what the heck are you doing? Murkerdon dies to Giant Killer General for some reason. I wasn't quite sure why that happened, but while that transpired, Kruniak ran in there and tried to do some damage of his own. It looks as if Kremisi is going to try to snipe that Mortar Dwarf, but I don't think it's going to happen. So, yeah, that was interesting. I wasn't quite sure what Murkerdon hoped to achieve. If I were him, I think I would have just retreated instead of trying to duel, you know, kind of like how Kirk retreated to save his Forest Giant, because even though your Forest Giant has low health, it's still pretty valuable. Speaking of Kirk, here he is. And all of a sudden, it looks like we're kind of in a bad spot. So I'm going to peel off my Solus and attempt to reinforce this area, this flag here, since that's pretty much the only flag that Giant Killer General needs. They also need flag 3, which I'm not sure where that is. Where's flag 3? Or maybe that is flag 3. No? That's... Wait a second. Maybe that's flag 3. Yeah, that's flag 3. So that is the only flag that they need. Oh, man. But I gotta tell you, I'm pretty excited for King of the Map. I think that's a really interesting game type, and I want to do some more coverage of that game type for you, just to show you a little bit of how it works. Since I did feature a video on my channel of how that kind of works, but I just kind of scraped the surface. I just kind of glossed over the features, and yeah, I remember that shot. Thor losing all of his berserks to Murkerdon there, so Merc kind of saving face a little bit. And all of a sudden, Kruniak's team is up a little bit. And Kirk is going to try to focus down Dak's Mortar Dwarf, and I think he is able to do so before we're able to reinforce it. Interestingly enough, because I figured, you know, he would be able to save it, but he keeps running out with him. Oh, man. And then he gets blocked by his own Thrall Elite. So I think I gave Renwood my units at some point. Yeah, he has some units. And he says he tagged these 2 southern flags, you know, and nobody else did. But I don't know. I think Kruniak might have... He had that berserk that was kind of running up like that, so I figured, you know, probably that unit went down here also. I don't know, just saying. And yeah, so now we're actually down because I guess we lost that Mortar Dwarf and who knows what else. And the time is kind of winding down a little bit. We got 4 minutes remaining. And we each still have, you know, approximately like 2/3 of our force intact. So interesting, Giant Killer General actually taking a little bit of damage. I didn't really notice that. But compared to Kruniak has managed to keep most of his... oh, that was an unfortunate dud there on Sasper. I never really noticed that. But yeah, Kruniak managing to keep his Forest Giant relatively intact for the entire duration of the game, which is pretty amazing. Although I think Sasper needs to be careful because here comes Sam the Butcher, but it looks like Shadow is going to attempt to push that force back. And you know, this was like really curious to me because Funky and Dom just kind of sat here for most of the game defending, whereas I think they could have pressed and taken the middle at this point. And Kruniak calling out, we have to push somewhat, which is kind of useful because, you know, that sort of keeps like the team sort of focused on the objective. You know, having that reminder. So it looks like Shadow is going to run in here and attempt to take out this force by Sam the Butcher, I believe. Although some of his units are just kind of sitting there. However, I do believe he is going to be somewhat successful. Oh, it was HW and Shadow kind of converged there. And Kirk is... So it's all tied up at 51%. Interestingly enough, Kirk, though, is really low on health, as we can see. And I'm just kind of, I'm caught in between all the action, it seems. Like I can't get there fast enough. Mercadon still with his Mortar Dwarf defending that flag, as well as Kruniak. And so now I think, Kirk and GKG, for some reason, to just hold. Okay, 1 minute. Hold, guys. Okay, because all they need to do, they don't need to tag the flag. All they need to do is defend, and they've won the game. So they retreat back here, which is, I think, their defensive, um, their defensive posturing really kind of galvanized our force to kind of move on their flag. So I think it possibly worked against them, because if they had remained in our backfield, perhaps we never would have organized like an attempt on their flag, um, like this. But since they were neatly kind of in one area, we were able to mobilize some forces. So that pus goal, losing its pus right there, was kind of, and here's another one, Funky losing his as well. And all of a sudden we have some momentum in moving on this flag. As yeah, we are up 4%. We have we have some units intact. We have all these guys here and these Solus, but more importantly, the Forest Giant is in pretty good shape. He's able to dispatch with a lot of these units pretty easily, pretty handily. And all of a sudden, this is the defense on the flag. Renwood is running sort of interference there and trying to keep those units occupied so that Kruniak could close the distance. He is going to stand up on the high ground here. And basically, when you're on impassable terrain, it's hard for anybody to be able to reach you and do some damage. But, yep, all of a sudden, GKG's Forest Giant is taken out. So that really worked well for us, I think. At least that final push there, as we went from a tie at 51% or so to 38% to 1%. So we were very cost effective with that last minute push. So it really worked out for us. I think their pus being taken out was pretty integral for that to succeed. Yeah, and also the fact that Kruniak had some health to spare at the end, because GKG's Forest Giant had lower health than Kruniak's. So I think Kruniak was able to slap a few extra units on his way to the flag pretty easily. As we can see, the person with the Forest Giant usually gets the highest damage, highest ratios as well. Although Mercadon didn't do too bad, although his Forest Giant, I think, was basically killed pretty early in the game. I think he managed to get a lot of damage with his Mortar Dwarf on top of that. And yeah, it looks like pretty much everybody on our team did pretty okay. Although Renwood, I didn't quite see how he lost his units, but I know I handed him some units on top of the units he lost, so he mostly did like positional work, like tagging flags, I'm guessing, instead of like actually attempting to take out enemy forces. So he actually didn't have very good ratios that game. So I think that's partially what motivated Kruniak to boot him from the game after this game was played. But I think that was kind of like the excuse given, whereas I think the real reason is that the Kruniak and Giant Killer General don't like Renwood. I think that's like the real reason. Anyway, these are two players for Giant Killer General that had Forest Giants, and as we can see, they both had the highest amount of damage, as well as the best ratios out of anyone on their team. And Kermisi actually had somewhat high damage with 63. But the other thing to look forward to is, this stats window is going to be updated a little bit for 1.8, which is on the way. It's not finalized yet, but just to give you a taste of what to look forward to, the damage is going to be correctly calculated in 1.8, so it will look a lot different than how it looks here, because there's a kind of a arbitrary number multiplier on these figures. And so damage figures are um, they're kind of derived from the unit trading values of the various units that have been killed. And a unit has to be killed in order for the damage to be factored. Um, at least damage. Yeah, I think that's how it works for damage dealt as well, or damage. I know that's the way it is for damage taken anyway, which isn't really available yet in the stats window, but who knows? But I believe the number is like 2.56, which is multiplied by the kind of unit trading values, and to get what we see here, and that's kind of arbitrary. So in order to reduce confusion, I believe it's that's going to be taken care of for 1.8. So you have that to look forward to. Also, more accurate stats tracking, since it will be fractional as well, and other things. So when I know more, I will be able to bring that to you. I am, of course, using a beta of 1.8 to view these films. That's how I'm able to kind of zoom in and out that far. But obviously, this game was played using 1.7.2, so those features aren't quite available yet. So keep an eye out for that in the near future. So that's going to be game number 1. Of course, and it really wasn't all that different from how I was able to understand it while playing. But I know some of these other games are going to be a lot different, and I'm kind of curious to see how those turn out as well. So on to game 2. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you then.